So hi. We are doing something a little unusual. We basically decided it was about time for a new addressing system for the world. And the reason that we decided this is because addresses as they are today, they're not really good enough. And they're not really good enough for lots of reasons, one of which is that lots of places don't have an address at all. Lots of places you might want to go. So you might want to go camping or tell someone where you took a beautiful photograph on Instagram. And you might want to tell someone where the best graffiti is in LA. LA has lots of great art on walls, and it's very hard to explain exactly where that is because a specific bit of a wall doesn't usually have a postal address. Or maybe you like to go outdoor surfing on the coast of Ireland, or you maybe want to go and visit a beautiful waterfall in rural Ireland. And it's often very hard to explain exactly where these kind of places are. I also am a big Airbnb user, and I've basically discovered the more beautiful an Airbnb is, the less likely it is that I will find it without having to phone somebody, because I basically will get like long descriptions that are things like, oh, it's hidden in the woods, go along the motorway, there'll be a tiny wooden sign 40 kilometers outside of Faro, and you'll have to turn left and then go off-road, and it's a bit of a disaster. So those things are frustrating. And then if you're like me and you like traveling around the world, it's frustrating and difficult when you go and try and find places in other countries. So I'm vegetarian, which means I'm constantly on TripAdvisor trying to find vegetarian restaurants when I'm traveling. I was recently in Japan, and I found this on TripAdvisor. Most of that review is describing how to get there, because the address doesn't work in Google Maps, it doesn't geocode. And indeed, this was my journey there, so it was pretty hard to find this path. There were some signs, but unfortunately my Japanese is not good enough to understand what those signs said. And eventually, after getting lost a few times, we did find it. So this is the restaurant. It was hidden in the middle of the trees, hidden being the operative word there. And by the time I arrived, I was pretty hungry and had to order very quickly because we got late. We got late from being lost. And so this is frustrating, and it's frustrating that when you go abroad, you struggle to find a place, either because you don't speak the language or maybe it just doesn't have an address. And then even when you do have addresses, they just don't do the job they should. So, for example, if you look up the address of Harrods in London, you get a pin right in the middle of a building. Now, that's fine if that's the helipad on the top of the building where I'm landing a helicopter, but it's not very useful if I'm trying to understand where the delivery entrance is, or the emergency access entrance, or the valet parking, or the ride-sharing entrance. So this is a problem, and it's not a problem of the map. So this is not a problem of a Google map, because it's the same on every map. It's not a problem with the map, it's a problem with the address. The addresses just aren't accurate enough. So you have a big problem with accuracy. And then when we're talking about cars, you also have problems with the fact that when we designed addresses, we designed them in a way that makes it really easy to make mistakes, and really hard for the machine, your car or your phone, to know that you've made a mistake. So, for example, if I mistype this address, Laugavegur, in Iceland, or something like that, if I miss out one R in the middle, then I drive 5 hours to the wrong side of Iceland because I follow the GPS in my car. Now, I know that because this became famous because a guy, an American tourist, did exactly that and had to be taken in by some friendly locals in a place he did not expect to end up. So it's really easy to make a mistake. And it's not just when you're using complicated words like that. In California, for example, lots of streets, sometimes within the same city or the same town called Acadia and Acacia. Now, the C and the D, very close to each other on the keyboard on your phone or in your car. Very easy to make a mistake and end up a couple of miles away, or worse, from where you'd started when you were trying to get to. Then you have problems like this. So I was in Stuttgart recently, staying in an Airbnb at 30 Plienigerstraße. And unfortunately, there was a lady who lived at 30 Plienigerstraße. And because there are two places with the same address, my taxi driver and I ended up surprising a poor lady who was not expecting an Airbnb guest. And we did eventually find our way, but it took us quite a while to understand what had gone wrong there. And it was just, hey, there was a duplicate address. And it's not just in Germany, this is all over the world. So going to Church Road in London, well, there are quite a few of those to choose from. Of course, this becomes worse when you're thinking about voice. So if you're trying to program addresses into your car so that your voice recognizer can understand where you're trying to go, you have loads of problems. One of them is things like, so Ammanford, for example, in this picture. Now, Ammanford is a very poetic word, but it's a word that we just made up. So that means you have to basically teach your car or your voice recognizer to understand every single made-up street name in every single country in the entire world. So for context, in Germany, you've got something like 400,000 unique street names. So you've got to teach all of those to your voice recognizer for every country in the world, which is a nightmare. So this is frustrating. It's frustrating if you're me, and this is my old flat in London, and it addressed geocodes in the middle of the road, which is not where my flat was. My flat was actually on the corner opposite that church, and it meant my pizza was late. I would get loads of those little delivery notes saying, hi, I'd get emails saying we couldn't deliver because we couldn't find your address, or we left it with someone else, and it was a disaster because no one could find my address. And it's not just frustrating for me. So the internet is full of people complaining, as it is. Lots of them complaining about addresses, whether it's Airbnb or Pizza Hut or Google Maps or Uber. People are constantly complaining. And of course, it's going to get worse once we talk about autonomy. So right now, if my taxi can't find me, comes to the wrong place, or drops me at the wrong place, and there's a person there, we can communicate. I can say, hi, I'm near the Starbucks, what can you see? And we kind of find each other. Once you take that driver out, it becomes much more complicated, and you'd quite like to get to exactly the right place if you're not driving the car. So we basically figured there should be a new system. It should be one that's universal, so it covers the whole world. It should be designed at that interplay between humans and machines, because that's what we do with addresses. We put them into machines with our voice or with typing. We could put them into machines. And it should work whether you live in rural Alaska and you want to get an Amazon package. It should work if you're trying to get a drone to do a delivery, or you're meeting someone for a yoga class on the beach. And of course, there is a universal addressing system, and it looks like this. So this is a wonderful universal addressing system if you're a machine. And it works perfectly, that covers the entire world. Each of these is completely unique. But the problem is, nobody has ever asked me to come to a wedding at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, 40.918, etc. So it's very, very hard for human beings to communicate this kind of an address. So we wanted to do something to this that made it communicable for humans. So this is what we did. We took the entire world and we divided it into a grid. This is a grid of 57 trillion squares. Each of these is 3 meters by 3 meters, and every single one has been labeled with an address made of 3 words from the dictionary. So these are 3 words from the dictionary. Thread, strollers, bumble is that exact 3 meter by 3 meter square at someone's house in Germany. There's not another one like it. It's a completely unique address for every square in the world. So thinking about an example of a stadium, you have a different address for every different entrance or every different parking space that you want to go to in a stadium. That restaurant I was trying to find in Japan, I could have just gone to Vitamin Scout Display, and that's exactly where you would need to end up. So I wouldn't have got lost and had to be hungry trying to find the restaurant. Thinking about Ireland, it means, yes, if you want to meet someone to go surfing or swimming at this particular spot on the beach in Kerry, you can go to Freed Rattle Virtues. This waterfall I showed you earlier, you can go and find it Intense Retrieves Happier. It doesn't have to be, of course, be rural areas. If you wanted to go to a bar, you can find the exact entrance to the bar. And actually, this is actually a very interesting piece of Irish street art that you can find at exactly Memory Shell Safety. So everywhere in the world has an address. That's an address that's easy to communicate. So you can communicate it to other humans and from a human to a machine, whether that's a car or a phone. In the background, it's still GPS. It's just a name for a GPS coordinate. So in the background, you've got a 16-digit GPS coordinate. And that's once it's been put into a machine, it's going to be treated like a GPS coordinate. It's just the simple way for me to put it into the machine. Now, we've done this in 26 languages so far. So this year our focus is on Asia, so we're launching Chinese later this year. Last week we launched Japanese and Korean. So you can use these 3-word addresses in your language of choice. If you are English or Irish and you're going on holiday to Mongolia, you can use English 3-word addresses. If you're Mongolian and you're going on holiday to Kerry, you can use Mongolian 3-word addresses. So the whole world has been covered in 26 languages so far. Now, the words seem random. So when you look at your house, there's no meaning, and I can demonstrate that because my old house was at Slugvine's Bucket. So there's no meaning in the words, there's no reflection on your house, but there's some logic to the words and the reasons that they are there. And there are basically 2 rules. One rule is that common words go where people live. So for example, table, chair, lamps goes in a city. These are common words. They're words you would use every day. They're easy to remember and understand. They go where people live. Whereas if you look at words like deconstructs, they're more likely to go in the ocean, in places where people don't live. So you've got common words where people are more likely to be living and using them. And the other rule, this is the one that's really important with cars, is that we put similar combinations really, really far apart. So you can see here, table, chair, lamp, singular, is in Australia, and table, chair, lamps is in the US. And what that means is if I make a mistake, because I'm a human and we make mistakes, or maybe my car, my voice recognizer doesn't understand me properly, or maybe I make a typo when I'm typing, I could make lots of mistakes and the car will already know what I'm trying to say because there's nothing similar in the same area. So if I mistype and I accidentally miss off the S off lamps, table, chair, lamps, my car will go, nope, you're not trying to drive to Australia, you're probably trying to drive to table, chair, lamps. So similar combinations go really, really far apart, so you can instantly error detect. And you can see here that that's what happens in action. So this is in our app, so we have a free app that you can download and have a play with and look up the address of your front door or your back door. I was typing this in London, so I typed in Offie Branched Pyramid. Now it knew I meant toffee, not coffee, because Toffee Branched Pyramid is in the UK and Coffee Branched Pyramid is in India. So instant error detection. So it's an addressing system that makes it okay to make mistakes. Behind the scenes, we have a piece of code. So we have a piece of code that means you can build this into anything, because this is a layer. It's a layer, it's an address, just like any other address, just much more accurate. So it means you can use it with existing maps, apps, cars, navigation systems, and so on. So it's used all over the world in about 170 countries in all kinds of ways. One of my favorite examples, this is actually from a couple of years ago. I think it was possibly our first ever travel guide, a printed travel guide, but probably 2.5 years ago now, and it was actually in Ireland. So the tourist organization there, people would go and they'd get given this travel guide, and it would tell them at the beginning to download the free app, and it would give them 3-word addresses for all of these different places where they could find when they were exploring. And since then, lots of people have copied, so it's not now, and it's not just travel guides in particular bits of Ireland, it's all over the world. All kinds of travel guides are listing 3-word addresses so you know exactly where you're going. I love seeing them pop up on TripAdvisor. Hosts can just add them to their pages on TripAdvisor, so if you want to go to this in Guatemala, you go to Rums Juggles Adoring, and that is that exact location of that Earth Lodge in Guatemala. As an Airbnb user, this makes me happy too. This is a skiing chalet in Switzerland, and of course, a skiing chalet might not have its own address, it might be hard to find. They give you the 3 words there, which are singer band's fight, and you can find the exact location of your skiing chalet. And lots of companies, hotels, they're putting it on their website, just like any other address, so you know exactly where you're meant to be going, and you can find the exact front door. So what you do with that when someone's given it to you, just like any other address, you type it into navigation apps. So, for example, NavMe, some of you guys might know NavMe. It's one of the world's biggest offline sat-nav apps on your phone, and you can type in 3-word addresses, including offline, because this system works fully offline, and you can type in the 3-word addresses and get routing just like you would to any other address. It's also used in things like ride-sharing and taxi apps. So this is Cabify, which is a bit like MyTaxi or Uber. And recently, Mercedes announced that they are bringing WHAT3WORDS to their cars. So WHAT3WORDS is now in new Mercedes cars. If you're buying an A-Class, the ones that have just come out, you will get WHAT3WORDS in. So you can get in your A-Class. You can either type, or you could use your voice. So you can say, hey, Mercedes, take me to WHAT3WORDS, market ashes backward. And that's all you need to give it, 3 words, and your Mercedes will navigate you to that exact 3 meter by 3 meter square. So it's pretty exciting to see it in Mercedes cars. We're also working with companies like Jaguar Land Rover doing off-roading. So they have an off-roading app with WHAT3WORDS in, because of course, when you're off-roading, you're very likely to come across places that don't have any addresses at all. There are other ways that people are using this in this OEM world. This one I love is a company doing electric rally racing. And they use 3-word addresses for pit stops, for their starting point, for them to meet their engineering teams. And actually, we've talked a lot about this particular car recently today. I've heard a lot about it. And they were doing part of the Mongol Rally. So they were driving across Europe a pretty long way. And they were using WHAT3WORDS to make sure they could find the charging stations, because it's really helpful if you can communicate the location of where you might be stopping to somebody. And similarly, so mobility, they've got WHAT3WORDS programmed into their app. So if you want to talk about a specific charging station, you can simply say torches, porch, answer, and that's a specific charging station of where you might be charging your car. So we love seeing all those different uses, from actually just traditional navigation in your car to labeling charging stations to finding spots for a rally race. And of course, we're very excited about where this is going in the future, thinking about things like autonomy. So this is Ollie, the local Motors bus, some of you guys might know. And we worked with them particularly on a project about accessibility. So one of the amazing things about autonomous vehicles means that people who couldn't drive before, so for example, people who are visually impaired, will be able to participate in this kind of transportation. And with Ollie, you can use your voice, you can give Ollie 3 words, and know that Ollie will take you to that exact 3 meter by 3 meter square that you're looking for. So that's one of the things we're looking forward to in the future. And a quick example of some other things, it's not just about vehicles that are driving, it might also be about delivery vehicles. This is an example of WHAT3WORDS with a drone and with Amazon Alexa. Oh, I'm just going to, go back and try that one again.
Alexa, go to location public warns artist.
Going to location, public warns artist.
So that's it. You say 3 words, and your drone knows exactly the 3 meter by 3 meter square that it's meant to be flying to. And it's used all over the world, not just in passenger navigation, but also in logistics and delivery. So we've done delivery tests in places like London, for example. Now, people often say, well, London has a wonderful addressing system. It's very sophisticated. Why do we need WHAT3WORDS? We did a delivery test with a company called QuickUp, who does last mile delivery, and they established that by having a 3-word address, they saved about 30% time in the last mile, because you know exactly where the door is. You're not going to a big building with 5 or 6 entrances and driving around for ages trying to find the way you get in. So it's used all over the world, including in places like London, in Dublin, in Germany. And one of the things I love seeing as well is how people use it in everyday life. So if you go on Instagram these days, you can see people tagging their Instagram posts either by writing in the 3-word address. You can see the 3 slashes, which is the sign for a 3-word address up there. Or indeed, we actually recently launched a photo app, so you can tag your beautiful photos with 3-word addresses and put them on Instagram, so everybody else knows exactly where those gorgeous places are. So that's WHAT3WORDS, and if you see these slashes and these 3 words, you'll now at least understand what they mean when you see them appearing everywhere. This is an example outside Potsdamer Platz, which is the HQ of Deutsche Bahn in Berlin. So if you go there in Berlin, that's literally on their window. This is a bus stop in Ulaanbaatar. So this is in the capital city of Mongolia. Every bus stop has a 3-word address in English and in Mongolian. And actually, I love this one. This one is an art gallery in Paris, and that is both the address and the name of the art gallery. So if you want to go and visit Tables Empty workshops, that's all the information that you need to get exactly there. So I'm just going to leave you with a quick demo of the new Mercedes A-Class coming off. They've just recently been coming off the production line, and this is them going to go and see that happening.
Gratulation, Thomas. Du und dein Team, ihr habt echt einen klasse Job gemacht.
Danke dir, Markus. Komm, steig ein. In ein paar Wochen starten wir die Produktion am nächsten Standort, in Ketschkewitz.
Ab nach Ungarn. Hey, Mercedes.
Was möchten Sie tun?
Navigiere zu WHAT3WORDS, Empires, Astronaut, Handshake.
So that's WHAT3WORDS. Thank you.